It's kind of striking when you hear it. A full 75% of men apparently believe their penis is smaller than average. Just think about that for a second. It
Yeah.
really throws a spotlight on the anxieties, doesn't it? And maybe the unrealistic standards we sometimes hold ourselves to, especially with something so personal as sexual health.
That statistic, it really is revealing, says a lot about the pressures, those kind of unattainable ideals so many men wrestle with.
Absolutely.
The key thing there, I think, is how that anxiety around size points to this performance-driven view of masculinity. And that can overshadow what actually brings satisfaction, for both people.
Exactly. And to help us kind of navigate this sometimes confusing area, we're diving into a really insightful book today. It's called Men's Sexual Health Fitness for Satisfying Sex by McCarthy and Michael Metz.
Ah, yes. Great resource.
Think of them as like really experienced guides. They've got, a combined 70 years of clinical experience they bring to this whole conversation.
And that hands-on work with actual patients, it really grounds what they say, It's based in the real-life stuff men deal with. Moves beyond just theory.
Totally. 70 years.
Oh.
They must have seen how common ideas, maybe myths, bump up against reality in their clinic.
Oh, undoubtedly. Their work constantly challenges those simplified, often inaccurate messages you hear floating around about men and sex. It gives them a very practical lens.
Right. Now, we get it. Sorting through information on sexual health, it can feel, overwhelming. Maybe even a bit awkward for you listening.
Mm-hmm.
There's just so much out there. And let's be honest, not all of it is based on solid fact.
Mm-hmm.
So our mission here in this deep dive is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
We want to pull out the core insights from McCarthy and Metz's work, give you some clear, hopefully actionable knowledge you can actually use in your own life.
Our goal really is to just cut through all the noise, the hype, and focus on what genuinely matters for you for understanding and, importantly, valuing your sexual health throughout your whole life. Give you that distilled wisdom so you can navigate this with a bit more confidence.
So over the next while, we're going to touch on a whole range of things relevant to you. Things like what's actually considered normal, how societal messages can kind of mess with our heads, that crucial link between emotional and physical well-being, and how to handle those challenges that life inevitably throws our way.
Sounds good.
So let's jump in. Okay, first off, let's try and unpack this whole idea of men's sexual health.
Yeah.
It's not just some static definition, is it?
No, that's a really crucial starting point for you. It's definitely not static. Think of it more as a lifelong process. It evolves, it takes on different shapes, different dimensions as you go through life stages. Boy, teen, adult, older adult.
Right. So what's healthy for a teen is different for a guy in his 50s.
Exactly. Completely different focus, different challenges, different needs.
Okay. And the book mentions the World Health Organization definition way back from 75. What was their thinking?
Yeah, the WHO, even back then, they emphasized it being a state of physical, emotional, mental, and social well-being related to sexuality, not just, the absence of disease or problems.
Ah, okay. So it's broader than just nothing's wrong.
Much broader. The key takeaway for you is that it's holistic. It's about your overall well-being in relation to sex, encompassing way more than just the physical mechanics.
And building on that, McCarthy and Metz talk about confidence and strength being really central. Where does that come from, according to them?
They ground that confidence for you in a really solid foundation. Physical principles, psychological ones, and relationship principles.
Okay.
So it's about feeling good in your body, but also being secure in your thoughts and feelings about sex and having healthy connections. It's about accepting your masculinity with, pride and self-respect, not shame.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, pretty much every guy, I'd guess, at some point wonders, is this normal when it comes to sex? The book talks about the huge range of concerns men have. What are some of the big ones they point out, the things that might resonate with you listening?
Yeah, they map out several key areas where guys commonly have questions. And these are probably things you've wondered about too. Physical stuff like penis size, which you mentioned right at the start.
Right.
Then there are questions about function, erections, ejaculation, how things work. Thoughts and fantasies are another big one, where men often wonder about normalcy. Also, the whole act of making love, what that involves, pleasing a partner. And finally, just general feelings, interest levels, and behaviors, like maybe pornography use.
It's a pretty wide net. I'm sure lots of those hit home for listeners. And it's interesting, the book notes how men sometimes misinterpret other emotions as sexual feelings. Can you explain that a bit more?
Yeah, there seems to be this tendency sometimes for men to experience a whole range of emotions. Could be anxiety, loneliness, maybe even the buzz from success at work, and kind of interpret that bodily energy as sexual.
Hmm.
So it might lead to sexualizing those feelings, maybe using masturbation to kind of relieve that tension or stress. It's not inherently bad, but it shows you that complex interplay between our emotions and our sexual urges.
Gotcha. And the book makes this point that while, yeah, sexual performance is important to men, we need to keep it in perspective.
Yeah.
Why is that so critical for you to understand?
Look, sexual function, the ability to get and keep an erection, say it is fundamental for many men's sense of sexual health. Dismissing that isn't helpful for you.
Right.
However, when performance becomes the only focus, that's where the trouble starts. It creates immense pressure, right?
Hmm.
Leads to anxiety, and ultimately it can actually block sexual pleasure, self-acceptance, and even intimacy in the relationship.
So it backfires.
Pretty much. It's about valuing function, sure, but not letting it be the sole yardstick of your sexual worth. Okay, so we've touched on normalcy, but the book also really dives into those unrealistic expectations about sex. They're everywhere in society. Where do they come from, and how might they be impacting you?
Yeah, it feels like we're swimming in them sometimes.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of what gets shown as sex in the society, and especially in porn, it just doesn't look much like realistic sexual experiences, based on actual scientific research.
Yeah.
There's this huge gap between public perception and fact, and that can definitely shape how you view sex.
It's like we're constantly bombarded with these super sexualized images and stories that just aren't real.
Mm-hmm.
And you end up internalizing this unrealistic picture.
Precisely. And when solid information gets drowned out by myths, maybe political agendas or just sensationalism, people really struggle to develop a healthy understanding of their own bodies, their partner's body, how sexuality actually works. It leaves you vulnerable to those distorted views.
And pornography gets singled out for being unrealistic. The book even defines fantasy in that context pretty bluntly. What is it, and why is that important for you to know?
Yeah, they define fantasy basically as what you don't have and can't reasonably have in real life with a real woman.
Okay.
Now, it's important for you to note, they don't say fantasy itself is bad, but they stress that porn exists purely in that fantasy realm, and it often pushes this idea that sex drive doesn't need any regulation, that anything goes. That just breeds unrealistic expectations about real intimacy for you.
And it feels like there's a double bind, almost. Because alongside those over-the-top fantasies, there's also often a lot of negative messaging around sex drive itself, right?
Yeah.
How does that affect you?
Exactly. The book points out this weird paradox. You get shame coming from different directions, maybe certain feminist views, anti-porn groups, or negative religious ideas about sin. And while the intent might be to stop unhealthy behavior, that shame can actually backfire. It can contribute to sexual impulsivity, and it really hinders men's sexual health for you. Creates this climate of secrecy and guilt, makes open talk and healthy regulation really difficult.
So it's a tricky tightrope for you to walk. These wild fantasies on one side, feeling guilty or ashamed about natural desires on the other. That doesn't sound like a great recipe for, well, healthy thinking for anyone.
Not at all. And that brings us right to a crucial point for you, the importance of healthy thinking in men's sexual health. The book highlights some core, often really damaging lessons many men just absorb.
Like what? What are some of those unhealthy thought patterns that get baked in, the kind of thing that might be affecting you without you even realizing it?
Well, one really harmful one is this idea that a real man never has questions or doubts about sex.
Ugh, yeah.
Or that equally toxic notion that a real man is ready and able to have sex with any woman, anytime, anywhere. These are incredibly strong cultural scripts, and they can trap men in this performance-focused, often competitive view of sex. You might definitely feel some of that pressure.
And questioning those ideas, it must feel really vulnerable for guys, right? Like you're risking your man card or something.
Totally. Men who dare to question these messages can get slapped with labels like wimps or girly men. It takes real personal courage for you to push back against those deeply ingrained societal pressures.
The book mentions an exercise 2.2, I think, for improving healthy thinking. It involves talking with other trusted men. What's the thinking behind that for someone wanting to challenge these ideas?
The core idea is that men are often discouraged from talking openly and healthily about sex, so this exercise aims to break that barrier for you. Create a safe space with guys you trust and respect. The guidelines stress being honest, clear, specific when sharing attitudes, experiences, feelings, and, importantly, explicitly discouraging things like one-upping, bragging, or putting others down.
It sounds like it could be incredibly helpful, but maybe also a bit intimidating for some guys. The book acknowledges that for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It recognizes setting up a group like that might not be practical or comfortable for everyone. So if that's the case, it suggests other ways for you to do that self-reflection, like journaling or having really open, honest talks with a partner about your experiences, feelings, what you've learned. The main thing is finding some way to confront those poisonous thought patterns.
And to give a structure for understanding all this for you, the book brings in the cognitive behavioral emotional model, CBE. Can you break that down? How does it apply to sexual health in your life?
Right, the CBE model. Basically, it says our thoughts, that's the cognitions, our actions, behaviors, and our feelings, emotions, they're all interconnected, constantly influencing each other. When you apply that to sexual health for you, understanding that interplay is vital. Your thoughts about sex, your beliefs, expectations, how you interpret things, they directly impact your feelings. Those feelings then influence your behaviors. And those behaviors loop back and shape your future thoughts and feelings.
Like a feedback loop.
Exactly. The crucial insight for you is that by understanding this loop, you can actually target specific areas, thoughts, feelings, or behaviors to make positive changes in your sexual health.
So if you have negative or unrealistic thoughts, that might create anxiety, which could lead you to avoid sex, which then reinforces the negative thoughts.
Yeah.
A cycle.
That's a perfect example. The CBE model stresses that each part, thoughts, feelings, behaviors, is valuable and contributes to your overall sexual health. Recognizing they're distinct but linked gives you more self-awareness, helps you pinpoint where changes could be helpful for you. Like challenging negative thoughts can lead to healthier emotions and more positive sexual actions.
And the book talks about feelings being complex, right? Like we can have mixed emotions or feelings can even morph into others. How does that work with sexual health for you?
It's really important for you to recognize that feeling multiple things at once is totally normal. You might feel desire and anxiety at the same time, for instance.
Yeah.
Plus, we sometimes maybe unconsciously convert one feeling into another, like someone taught to suppress anger might express it as shame instead. Understanding these kinds of complexities helps you tune in better to your own emotional landscape and how it's affecting your sexual experiences.
And the book emphasizes that even those negative feelings, they actually serve a purpose for you.
Absolutely. The authors frame feelings almost like guides or loyal friends trying to get your attention. They offer honest information about what's going on and push you to consider more than just logic when you respond. Every feeling, even uncomfortable ones like fear or anger, is trying to protect you or guide you in some way. So listening to and considering your feelings gives you richer data to inform your choices and behaviors around sex.
So it's about acknowledging and understanding them, not necessarily acting on every single impulse that pops up.
Precisely. Feelings are valuable intel for you, but they don't have to run your life. You still have the power to choose your actions, even with strong emotions bubbling up. The book also touches on how we express feelings directly, indirectly, highlighting how crucial direct communication is with a partner for real understanding in your relationships.
Okay. Now, shifting slightly, the book outlines the main reasons for sex beyond just making babies. What are some of those key drivers that might resonate with you?
Yeah, they identify several core reasons people have sex, and these probably feel familiar to your own experiences. Things like shared pleasure and enjoyment, deepening intimacy and satisfaction in the relationship, tension reduction, kind of a way to cope with the stresses of life together, and also reinforcing self-esteem and confidence. While procreation is the biological baseline, these other factors are huge in the human experience of sex for you.
It's a good reminder for you that sex is so much more than just a physical act. It's tangled up with our emotions, our relationships, our sense of self. And speaking of more than just the physical act, the book really pushes for valuing touch and pleasure in all forms, not just intercourse and orgasm. Why is that so important for healthy sexuality in your life?
Because focusing only on intercourse and orgasm makes your sexuality really narrow and ultimately kind of vulnerable for you. If sex becomes this intercourse or nothing deal, chances are nothing will eventually win out, especially when you hit natural bumps in sexual function. That pressure for perfect performance, the whole sex on demand idea, it's just toxic for healthy sexuality in your life.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Takes the fun and spontaneity out, turns it into a chore almost.
Exactly right. The book uses this powerful example of couples doing infertility treatments, where sex becomes this scheduled task tied to ovulation.
Oh, wow.
And what happens? Often it leads to erectile dysfunction or loss of desire in men. They get caught in this cycle of anticipatory anxiety and performance pressure. That might resonate with you in other stressful situations, too.
So broadening your definition of sex, including affectionate touch, sensual touch, playful, erotic, as well as intercourse that actually protects you from those performance fears.
Precisely. Valuing all types of touch shifts the focus for you, moves you away from a narrow, goal-driven approach towards a more, well, holistic experience of pleasure and connection. It underlines that sex is this balance, pleasure, self-acceptance, partner intimacy, energizing the relationship, overall satisfaction. It's a positive part of being masculine, sure, but it's not the only definition. Expressing sexuality in ways that boost self-esteem and the relationship, that becomes the priority for you.
And the book mentions viewing your partner as a sexual friend within an intimate team. How is that different from maybe more traditional views of sex and relationships that you might have come across?
That's a great distinction. In casual encounters, like one-night stands or paid sex, the focus is mostly eroticism, right? Intimacy might even feel like it gets in the way of the sexual response.
Go.
But within a committed relationship, a sexual friendship, a marriage sex is inherently part of that intimate connection for you. It happens within the context of daily life, with all its ups and downs. Seeing your partner as a sexual friend emphasizes shared experience, mutual pleasure, working together as an intimate team to navigate your sexual life.
Right.
This really breaks from older models where maybe initiating sex and frequency was seen as the man's job, while affection and intimacy were more the woman's territory.
So it's about a more equal, collaborative approach to sex within your relationships.
Absolutely. When both partners value intimacy and pleasuring and eroticism, it just leads to a healthier, more satisfying relationship for both of you. Yeah, maybe the pathways to intimacy differ slightly between men and women sometimes, but that underlying desire for connection, that's shared for you and your partner.
And to fight off that worry about sexual boredom or dysfunction that you might experience, the book suggests blending different arousal styles. What are those styles and how might you use them?
Yeah, they talk about three main arousal styles. There's partner interaction arousal, that's what most people think of, sex with someone else.
Okay.
Then there's sensual self-entrancement. That's about focusing on your own sensual feelings and experiences, like the pleasure of a warm bath, maybe.
Interesting.
And third is role enactment arousal. That could be playful teasing, acting out a fantasy, that kind of thing. The mistake, the book says, is thinking arousal only comes from constant variety and novelty, which relies too much on that partner interaction. When you learn that sensual self-entrancement can actually boost and stabilize your arousal, and you can add role enactment to that mix, it can really ease anxieties about boredom or dysfunction. A healthy sexuality embraces a blend of these different purposes for sex and these different arousal styles. Okay, let's switch gears again. Let's talk about how your understanding of sexuality actually develops, starting way back in childhood. The book stresses that sexual growth is lifelong, with roots in your earliest years. That might be a surprising idea for you.
It's a really important perspective for you to consider. Yeah. Your sexuality as a little boy obviously is very different from being an adult man. But those experiences, those learnings from childhood, adolescence, young adulthood, they all feed into shaping your adult sexuality. It's one continuous developmental path for you.
And the book mentions the kind of polarized views on childhood sexuality. What's the scientific take on this? How might that help you understand your own past? Well, historically, you had thinkers like Freud who recognized kids were sexual beings, just not in an adult intercourse way. But often in modern Western culture, there's a strong belief that kids are not sexual.
Right.
But research, and frankly, many people's own childhood memories, suggest kids are curious, inquisitive about their bodies, other people's bodies. They experiment with pleasure, including genital touch. And this curiosity, it's actually a normal, healthy part of sexual development for everyone, including you.
So that natural curiosity you might remember feeling as a kid, it wasn't something wrong or shameful in hindsight.
Exactly. The book is pretty critical of abstinence-only sex ed programs that lack comprehensive, accurate info. Studies show those programs, and especially things like virginity pledges, often don't delay sex. And worse, they can lead to guilt, shame, higher rates of STDs, and unwanted pregnancies because young people like you once were lack proper education.
So the book pushes for a very different kind of sex ed for young people, something maybe for you to think about if you have kids or work with young people.
Yes, it champions giving young people accurate, balanced, open information about sexuality from a positive viewpoint, but within the parents' values framework. Research shows that fully informed young people, they tend to be more responsible, more likely to protect themselves from pregnancy, STDs, better at self-regulating impulses, and often more likely to delay sex until they feel ready. that's valuable info for you to consider.
And to show this natural childhood sexuality, the book gives examples of behaviors seen in young boys. What are some of those? Might they spark any memories for you listening?
Yeah, studies of like 2 to 5-year-old boys often report things like touching their genitals at home or even in public sometimes, touching or trying to touch their mom's breasts, standing maybe a bit too close to people, trying to peek when people are nude or changing.
Okay.
Interestingly, similar things are seen in girls that age too, though maybe boys do them a bit more often, and girls seem to touch their genitals less in public. But the data really shows sexual curiosity and exploration are normal for both genders early on, something you might reflect on from your own development.
And as kids get older, those public behaviors usually fade, right?
Yes, as kids develop, they learn the values, the boundaries of their family, their community. Those public sexual behaviors naturally decrease from toddlerhood up to puberty. It reflects healthy learning and socialization. The book stresses that healthy development is this gradual, step-by-step learning process, guided by a child's own curiosity and comfort. Now, disruptions like childhood sex abuse can really negatively impact a boy's development, leading to internal conflict, broken trust, something to be mindful of when understanding yourself or others.
And when boys hit adolescence, what are the key sexual milestones and worries they typically face? Things you might recall from your own experience.
Well, the book notes first intercourse is obviously a big milestone. Curiosity and readiness are often the main reasons men report. Experiencing some dysfunction back then, like premature ejaculation or occasional erection issues, that's statistically normal. The key thing is how it's handled. Avoiding panic, avoiding performance pressure, that's crucial because those things just make it worse for you or any young person. The teen years are also dominated by this huge concern about normalcy, anxiety about body image, masturbation, wet dreams, penis size, performance, STDs, just wanting acceptance.
Yeah.
This is also when sexual identity orientation starts to come into focus. The book defines that as a mix of things: attraction, self-identity, behavior, fantasy focus, gender of emotional friends, social comfort.
Sounds like adolescence is a really critical time for shaping a young guy's understanding of his own sexuality. That probably held true for you too.
Absolutely. It's such an intense period. Physical changes, emotional shifts, plus navigating often confusing messages about sex and masculinity. Getting accurate info and having open communication during those years is vital for healthy development, something that likely influenced the man you are today. Let's maybe shift to the historical and physiological angles the book brings in. It's interesting how our understanding has changed and how that might shape your own views now.
Okay, yeah. History and biology.
Indeed. The book gives this historical macro view, traces how we went from seeing human sexuality as purely biological to this more complex biopsychosocial understanding we have now. For centuries, people just grappled with the basic biology.
Right.
Spiritual beliefs, theology, superstitions often filled the knowledge gaps. Slowly, objective, observable, empirical knowledge started to emerge, giving us a more validated, integrated view, the view you basically have today.
And societal views on what's acceptable sexually has swung back and forth quite a bit over time. That continues to evolve in ways that might affect your own sense of what's normal or okay.
Oh, definitely. There's tons of evidence for a wide range of sexual behaviors throughout history, but with wildly different levels of acceptance or condemnation. Things like monogamy, polygamy, same-sex relationships, fidelity, affairs, prostitution, they've all had periods of being okay and periods of being taboo. Even ideas about what's attractive have varied hugely. The big message from history for you is that sexual behaviors are common and diverse, and societies have always struggled to understand and regulate them. And there's this recurring theme of sex being tied to life's meaning, from ancient myths to spiritual beliefs.
It's fascinating how different times and places have approached something so fundamental, and how that might subtly color your own perspectives today. The book also gets into the physiological nuts and bolts of sex differentiation. What are the key points there for you to grasp of the biology?
Physiologically, the book points out that the starting point for both male and female development in the womb is initially the same. For the first, 4 to 8 weeks, we're sexually undifferentiated.
Wow.
It's the introduction of androgens male hormones like testosterone, triggered by the XY chromosome in males that steers development towards being physically male. And interestingly, the undifferentiated embryo has similar parts. The genital opening becomes the vagina in females, or essentially kind of sews shut in males, forming that seam on the scrotum. The penis is basically an enlarged clitoris, and the testicles and ovaries come from the same original gonadal tissues. Understanding these shared origins helps you appreciate both the similarities and differences in sexual pleasure and arousal between men and women.
And having a basic grasp of how an erection works is useful for you too, right?
Absolutely. The book gives a simple overview of the vascular system's role for your info. When a man's relaxed and open to stimulation, blood flow increases to the penis. Now, various physical things, high blood pressure, medication side effects, vascular disease, diabetes, can mess with this process, leading to erectile dysfunction. But psychological factors too, anxiety, distraction, negative thoughts, and relational issues like conflict or feeling alienated from a partner can also play a huge role for you or someone you know. Understanding all these potential factors is key to managing ED.
The book also nudges men to get familiar with their own anatomy, like doing testicular self-exams. Why is that important for your health?
Self-examining your testicles is mainly important for catching any abnormalities early, like lumps, which could be signs of testicular cancer. Plus, the testicles are your primary male sex glands. They make sperm and testosterone, which is vital for male characteristics and sex drive for you. Understanding their job just highlights how important they are to your overall sexual health. The book also covers basic penis anatomy, shaft, glands, corona, and how sensitive different parts are. And it tackles that big topic, penis size.
Right. So what's the bottom line on penis size from the book's view? What should you keep in mind?
Well, it gives the average sizes, flaccid and erect, but it really stresses that functional size for intercourse is what matters. And by that definition, pretty much all men fit. It directly debunks that myth that most men are smaller than average, a belief often fueled by that performance anxiety model that can create needless worry for you.
Okay.
And importantly, solid science shows zero link between penis size and sexual desire or response for either the man or the woman. Most women say it's not the size, it's how you make love that counts. So adopting a positive body image, accepting your penis as it is, that promotes psychological and relationship health for you. Let's talk now about some of the differences and similarities between male and female sexuality that the book gets into. It's interesting where those distinctions lie and how they might play out in your relationships.
Yeah, always a hot topic.
One difference they highlight is that women's erotica often seems less visual, more focused on emotional stories, romance. That contrasts with the more visual things that often arouse men. Something useful to keep in mind in your interactions. But despite maybe different triggers, the book shares data on sex frequency and duration for American adults. And it shows that, contrary to maybe what media suggests, super frequent sex isn't the norm. Average intercourse frequency is around 6-7 times a month. Encounters typically last somewhere between 15 minutes and an hour. And interestingly, sexual satisfaction tends to go up with age, especially for committed couples. That might be encouraging for you to hear.
The book also looks at the appeal of different sexual activities beyond just intercourse, using data from that big NHSLS survey.
Yeah.
What did they find that might be relevant to your interests?
Yeah, the NHSLS data showed a big majority of American couples enjoy oral sex, both giving and receiving. Anal intercourse, about half of couples had tried it at some point, though less often recently. The book actually has a table showing the appeal of a whole range of practices for men and women, highlights where preferences overlap and where they differ. Might be interesting for you to compare with your own preferences.
And adult masturbation comes up. That often carries a lot of negative vibes that you might have picked up on. What's the book's angle on it?
The book really argues for seeing masturbation as just a behavior, one with a wide range of possible positive and negative functions and meanings for you, rather than just slapping a label on it, like bad or second best.
Right.
It emphasizes that both men and women need to learn to regulate their sex drive, including masturbation frequency, in a way that supports their sexual and relationship health. The data shows it's a common practice for both men and women.
What about fidelity? Another area where media portrayals might shape your perceptions. What does the actual research say?
Yeah, despite how common infidelity seems in movies or TV, the scientific data suggests over 3/4 of both men and women stay sexually faithful to their committed partner throughout their lives. The reported rates of ever having an affair outside the relationship are around 20-25% for men, maybe 10-15% for women.
And orgasm frequency during sex with a partner seems different for men and women, according to the book.
Yes, the data indicates men report having an orgasm in about 95% of partnered sex encounters. For women, it's around 71%, regardless of age. Interestingly, while how often couples have sex might decrease with age, the frequency of orgasm during sex tends to stay pretty stable.
Okay, let's talk sex drive libido. The book links it to hormones and brain pathways in your own body.
Great. Sex drive is this powerful human motivation, mostly linked to androgens, especially testosterone, and related brain pathways affecting motivation in both sexes. But there are those notable differences in what initially sparks it. Men tend to be more visually stimulated, while women often respond more to romantic words, images, themes. Again, something useful to remember in your relationships. Evolutionary theories suggest this might stem from men's biological drive to find a mate, focusing on cues of youth, health. Women might assess a partner based more on emotional connection, memory. Novelty also plays a part, boosting dopamine, the reward chemical, which can ramp up sex drive, especially in men.
The book also brings in Helen Fisher's 3 types of love, lust, romantic love, attachment, and their brain chemistry. How does that help you understand your own sexual relationships?
Fisher's model is great for helping you sort out the different drives and feelings in intimate relationships. Lust, that's driven by hormones like testosterone, the craving for sexual gratification.
Okay.
Romantic love, that intense focus, attraction, high energy linked to dopamine, maybe low serotonin, the happiness regulator. And attachment, that calm emotional union with a long-term partner linked to oxytocin, the bonding hormone, and vasopressin.
Right.
What's crucial for you to realize is these 3 systems, they aren't always synced up. They can even conflict. You might feel deep attachment to your long-term partner, but maybe romantic feelings for someone else or lust for someone else entirely. Understanding these separate drives helps you set realistic expectations and maybe develop wiser strategies for your sexual and relationship health.
The book talks about this natural male tendency towards sexual objectification
Yeah.
and the need to regulate it in your own life. Can you explain that?
Yeah, the book suggests men, especially younger men, might have this natural biological leaning towards sexual objectification, where arousal can be really heavily dependent on external, particularly visual, sexual cues.
Okay.
Now, while acknowledging this as maybe a natural tendency, it stresses how important it is for healthy men to learn to regulate that energy. Balance it with personal respect for women in your interactions. Unchecked objectification can lead to over-relying on that partner interaction arousal, needing constant novelty. That can harm intimate relationships. Developing those other arousal styles, self-entrancement, role enactment, can help regulate this and bring both spice and comfort to a couple.
But ultimately, despite these differences, the book hammers home that the main goal for couples is shared emotional and sexual satisfaction. That probably resonates with your own desires in a relationship.
Absolutely. Yeah, maybe the paths to satisfaction differ. Men often connect emotionally through sex. Women might connect sexually through emotional intimacy, but that fundamental desire for satisfaction, that's shared by you and your partner. Misunderstanding or ignoring each other's main pathways to intimacy can accidentally block the very connection you both want. Recognizing and valuing each other's approaches is just key for fostering both emotional and sexual fulfillment for you as a couple. Now, let's look at what the book calls the mantra of healthy sexuality. It breaks it down into 4 key parts that might be really helpful for you to think about in your own life. What are they?
Okay, a mantra. I like that.
The mantra has 4 core components: intimacy, pleasuring, eroticism, and satisfaction. The book basically says these 4 things are fundamental to a fulfilling sex life, both for you individually and as a couple.
And it suggests doing a self-check on each one. That sounds like a pretty valuable exercise for you.
Yeah, it provides an exercise where you can kind of rate your current satisfaction level for each of those 4 parts. It encourages honest reflection. How do you feel about the intimacy, the pleasuring, the eroticism, the overall satisfaction in your sex life? And importantly, it suggests sharing these self-checks with your partner. Her perspective, her understanding can add really valuable insights and help build a shared picture of your sexual dynamic.
And once you've maybe identified areas you're not thrilled with, the next step is thinking about making changes in your own life or relationship.
Exactly. The book suggests pinpointing any components you're concerned about or want to change. It advises maybe picking just 1 or 2 areas to focus on at first and developing a realistic plan to improve things. Now, if most of the components feel problematic for you, it presents that as a strong sign that maybe getting professional help would be beneficial. Approaching therapy for a sexual issue is framed really positively as a sign of good judgment, a proactive step toward growth for you and your relationship.
The book even throws out some examples of activities to boost pleasuring and eroticism, things you might find inspiring. Can you share 1 or 2?
Sure. For enhancing pleasuring, ideas include trying a new sensual lotion together, spending time just making out without any pressure for intercourse, taking turns giving and receiving touch, maybe having the woman lead the pace and sequence of a pleasuring session.
Oh,
To boost eroticism, suggestions include initiating sex somewhere unexpected, like in front of the fireplace, or maybe trying one-way sex to orgasm where the giving partner just focuses on their own enjoyment of pleasuring the other.
It's about being intentional, creative, exploring different facets of sex in your own life and relationships. And the book talks about taking the best and leaving the rest from traditional male sexuality. What does that mean for you?
Integration, yeah. It
Yeah.
means holding on to the positive parts of traditional male sexuality while consciously ditching the harmful stuff and adding in new, healthier components to your own approach.
Yep. So what's the best to keep?
The best includes things like that positive link between masculinity and sexuality, feeling proud as a man, valuing sex, enjoying arousal, erection, intercourse, orgasm without guilt. Those are good things.
And the worst to discard for you.
The words to confront and let go of for you includes that rigid focus on perfect performance, the shame around asking questions or feeling unsure, seeing sex as autonomous instead of intimate and interactive, striving for perfect control instead of flexibility, and reducing sex to just a one-dimensional performance instead of understanding it as this richer process of intimacy, pleasure, and eroticism.
So it's really about widening your definition of healthy male sexuality beyond just performing.
Precisely. The key for you is valuing both intimacy and eroticism. Seeing your partner as a sexual friend to share with, not someone to perform for. It's not about giving it pride in erection or intercourse, but expanding that foundation to include intimacy, pleasuring, and focusing on sexual satisfaction as an interpersonal thing, not a solo show. Now, let's get into this concept of good enough male and couple sexuality. This sounds like a really big idea the book offers, one that could potentially take a lot of pressure off for you.
Good enough sex. Yeah, that sounds relieving.
It is, though it can be challenging for you to embrace initially because the traditional male sex model, it often revolved around the big, powerful penis and perfect intercourse performance. Like it was a way to prove yourself to your partner, compete with other guys.
Right.
Sex was often framed like a pass-fail test, and that fear of being seen as a sexual loser, that loomed large for you. The core of that fear was not having a penis ready for action anytime, anywhere.
That sounds like an insane amount of pressure to live under. You've probably felt that sometimes.
Absolutely. And by that definition of loser, the book basically says the vast majority of men would fall short, and the few who didn't would live in constant fear of eventually failing. That traditional perfect performance model just leaves you perpetually vulnerable to a massive blow to your sexual confidence.
So good enough sex offers a different path, a more freeing one for you.
Yes, it provides this opportunity for you to experience a whole range of experiences, sensual, playful, erotic intercourse that enhance sexuality without that crushing pressure for perfection. The ultimate goal of couple sex shifts. It becomes relationship intimacy and satisfaction, not just hitting orgasm every single time.
And the benchmark for sexual confidence changes too for you, it sounds like.
Exactly. That old standard of perfect control over erection, intercourse, orgasm, it gets replaced. The emphasis shifts to self-confidence grounded in your ability to give and receive pleasure-oriented touching.
Okay.
The book suggests, yeah, this touching will often lead to intercourse and orgasm, but the touching itself, it has value on its own, whether it's affectionate, sensual, playful, erotic. Intercourse becomes one special pleasuring experience, not the only measure of sexual skill for you. Even touch experiences that don't end in intercourse. They can be normal, enjoyable, not failures. The essence of sexual confidence becomes sharing pleasure, not achieving perfect performance.
It's a much more, relaxed and accepting way to approach things that you can adopt.
Precisely. And it's important for both you and your partner to value sex as this positive energy in your lives. Something encompassing touch, pleasure, fun, play. Seeing sex as more than just intercourse lets you use affectionate, soothing touches as messages of acceptance, closeness, support. Affirming that your sexuality and your partner's is a good thing in life, a core part of your bond, that's crucial for boosting sexual self-esteem for both of you.
The book also maps out how sexuality evolves in a relationship, maybe starting more self-focused in youth, then becoming more intimate, interactive as you mature in your relationships.
Right. In youth, male sexuality can be more self-contained, experiencing desire, arousal, orgasm, maybe without even meeting a partner. But as you mature, get into serious relationships, the value of sex is an intimate, interactive experience. That grows for you. Accepting your partner as an intimate, erotic friend is key.
Okay.
This means breaking free from those old gender roles where maybe initiation and frequency was the man's job and affection and intimacy was the woman's. When both partners value intimacy and pleasuring and eroticism, the relationship just gets healthier, more satisfying for both of you. The book really stresses that in healthy adult sexual relationships, men and women share more similarities than differences sexually. Emotional and sexual differences often complement each other. They don't have to oppose each other. And the big similarity, the desire for sexuality to play a major role in overall relationship satisfaction for both partners.
And that CBE model, the cognitive behavioral emotional one, it applies to the couples dynamic too. That might be useful for you to think about in your own relationships.
Yes, absolutely. You can apply that framework to the relationship as a whole. Look at the couple's identity, their shared beliefs about relationships, how well they cooperate in solving problems, their level of intimacy, especially their ability to empathize with each other's feelings. A strong relationship identity involves shared ideas about what a relationship should be, how to act as a team, how to blend gender roles, how to balance autonomy and connection.
And the book points out the benefits of cooperative conflict resolution, working together on problems for both the general relationship and the sexual side that you might experience.
Definitely. When couples act like a team to resolve conflicts, it boosts self-esteem, creates chances for better understanding and support, deepens appreciation for each other's complexity, reinforces respect, builds confidence for future conflicts, and just creates positive feelings and comfort that make sexual desire easier for you as a couple. It also reinforces that feeling of an honest relationship built on mutual acceptance, not some myth of perfection. Allows each partner to just be themselves, flaws included.
The book also keeps coming back to realistic, age-appropriate sexual expectations being vital for satisfaction throughout your life.
Absolutely crucial for you. As you age, your body changes, right? So your sexuality changes too. Sex at 20 is different from 40 or 60 or 80. But aging doesn't mean sex ends. Being aware of and accepting bodily changes instead of fighting them, that's a key positive expectation for you. As maybe vascular neurological systems get a bit less efficient with age, those psychological skills, relational skills, psychosexual skills, they become even more important for sexual function and satisfaction. The book totally debunks the myth of a sexual prime at 22, stressing that intimate intercourse stays key after 25. Sexual satisfaction at any age is grounded in realistic expectations of your body, your emotional state, and your relationship health.
And the flip side is the negative impact of that pressure for perfect performance, especially as you get older.
Yes, that sex-on-demand mindset can be really damaging for you as you age and experience natural bodily changes. It just creates anticipatory anxiety, turns sex into this tense performance, leads to frustration, embarrassment, avoidance. The healthy cycle is more like positive sexual anticipation, pleasure-focused sex, and a regular rhythm of desire, pleasure, satisfaction without the pressure of some rigid performance standard.
The book shares that interesting story about Marcello and Maria scheduling slow love sessions. What does that show you?
Ah, yes. Marcella Maria's example, it just beautifully illustrates for you that idea of realistic cooperative sex that actually fits into the reality of busy daily lives.
Right.
They acknowledge their sexual experiences will vary, and they intentionally carve out time for longer, intimate, erotic encounters amidst everything else. It shows how you can proactively weave sex into your relationship rather than just hoping for some spontaneous moment that might get lost in the chaos of work and family.
It's a reminder for you that sex plays many roles and has different meanings throughout your life, adapting as things change.
Exactly. Sex can be about reducing tension, affection, connection, escape, fun, healing after a fight, reinforcing intimacy, even a spiritual experience for you. It can fit into daily life, and daily life can fit into your sex life. It adapts to vacations, trying to conceive, recovering from arguments, managing job stress, celebrating good times, coping with disappointments, reconnecting after travel, adjusting to kids leaving home, navigating illness, medications, enjoying more flexibility in retirement. Good enough sex works with life and makes the relationship special for you. Okay, let's dig into the connection between your physical fitness, your emotional well-being, and your sexual function. The book really emphasizes how linked these are, and it's critical for you to understand this.
Yeah, the mind-body connection seems huge here.
Absolutely. Physical health, emotional health, sexual function, they're all deeply tied together for you. The book strongly recommends getting into a healthy, balanced exercise program. Regularity and frequency are the keys, tailored to your age and what you can do. Exercise benefits your breathing, your heart, your blood vessels, all crucial for sexual vitality and function for you.
And it suggests keeping a health behavior log. Just to get a baseline, what kind of things should you track to get that clearer picture of your overall health?
Yeah, it suggests keeping a daily log for about 2 weeks. Focus on 4 main areas: sleep, exercise, eating habits, and alcohol or drug use.
Okay.
For each one, just honestly record your patterns: how much sleep, What kind of exercise? How long? How often do you eat? What kind of quality? What's the context and amount of alcohol or drug use? Then reviewing that data, maybe with your partner or a trusted friend, can give you real insights into your physical well-being and show you areas that might need attention.
And it gives concrete tips for making positive changes in those areas. What are some key recommendations you can actually put into practice?
For sleep, it suggests setting a regular bedtime, creating a relaxing routine before bed, limiting naps. For exercise, the key is finding something you can do regularly, at least 3 times a week, and building up time and intensity gradually.
Right. Start small.
Exactly. For eating, it's about moderation, planning meals, being mindful of how you eat. Regarding alcohol and drugs, the advice is mostly about moderation, avoiding drinking alone or using it to self-medicate or sleep, and paying attention to any red flag incidents where maybe you drank way too much.
The book also talks a lot about emotional fitness, pointing out how everyday stress really takes a toll on you.
Yes, emotional fitness is vital for your overall well-being, and it directly impacts your sexual health and satisfaction. The daily grind, even for guys who wouldn't call themselves type A, can lead to this emotional fatigue that just saps sexual desire and function. The book notes we generally have less free time than people used to, and work demands have often increased, creating more emotional strain for you.
So just like you need a physical fitness plan, you kind of need an emotional fitness program too. What might that look like for you?
Well, the book recommends developing specific strategies that support your mental, emotional, and behavioral health. Things like prioritizing real vacations annual, semi-annual to actually disconnect from work, consciously trying to find a better work-life balance, implementing stress management techniques into your daily routine, maybe mindful commuting, or deliberately setting aside quiet time with your partner, no distractions.
It's interesting, the book mentions this paradox. Poor physical or emotional health seems to have a bigger negative impact on your sexuality than good health has a positive one.
That's a really key insight for you. While being fit and emotionally healthy is definitely good, the negative fallout from poor health habits and chronic stress on your sexual function and satisfaction can be much more noticeable, more pronounced. It just underlines why it's so important to proactively manage your health behaviors and stress levels.
The book shares Art's story, illustrating how regaining control of health habits after a divorce had positive effects all around, something you might relate to. What were the key parts of his turnaround?
Art's story really shows those positive ripple effects that taking charge of your health can have for you too. After a tough divorce, his initial coping was, well, not great, overeating, drinking too much, isolating himself.
In there?
Right. The turning point came when his brother and sister-in-law kind of gently pushed him to prioritize his physical and emotional health. He made gradual changes, sustainable ones to exercise, eating, drinking, and importantly, those positive shifts led to new social connections, boosted his self-esteem, and eventually he found a new romantic partner who actually supported his healthier lifestyle. It just perfectly illustrates how interconnected everything is: physical, emotional, social, and how improving one area can lift others, including your sexuality. Let's talk about lifelong healthy sexuality and aging now. The book really drives home the point that you remain a sexual being your whole life.
Yeah, that's an important message.
Absolutely. You're a sexual man until you die. Sexual expression continues, it just naturally changes as you age. The key for you is adapting to those changes and keeping a positive outlook.
What are some of those normal sexual changes you can likely expect as you get older?
The book outlines several typical ones. Erections might take longer to happen, maybe be a bit less firm. That feeling of ejaculatory urgency might lessen. The duration, the intensity of ejaculation might decrease. Some older men might even have an orgasm without ejaculating sometimes. It's just crucial for you to understand and accept these as normal age-related shifts, not as signs of decline or failure.
And the way you get aroused might shift a bit for you as you age.
Yes, the book points out a potential shift, maybe towards being more receptive to direct penile touch manual or oral as a way to build and reinforce arousal. This might be new for you if you were used to getting aroused really quickly when younger. It also stresses being open to creative sexual scenarios and, importantly, avoiding the urge to rush into intercourse the second an erection appears out of fear of losing it. That sexual drag racing, as they call it, totally counterproductive for you.
The book tells George's story, Healthy Sex in a Second Marriage After Being Widowed at 63. What are some takeaways from his experience that you might find useful?
George's story is a really positive example for you of navigating sexuality later in life. After losing his first wife, he made sure to grieve properly, establish his own life again before looking for a new partner.
Smart.
Yeah. And when he started dating, he focused on serious relationships, prioritizing companionship and commitment. He and his second wife, Liz, they talked openly about their sexual expectations. They developed a style that was vital, energizing for them, but it wasn't the only focus of their relationship. Their story really highlights valuing companionship, commitment, open communication in later life relationships, and recognizing that sexuality absolutely continues to play a big role in intimacy and connection for you as you age. It also nods to the complexities of second marriages, like involving adult kids.
It's a good reminder for you that sexuality just keeps evolving, and intimacy, connection, they take different forms and priorities as you get older. Now let's tackle a possibly tougher area, dealing with sexual and health problems that you might face or worry about. The book lists a range of common issues.
Right. The book identifies several common male sexual problems for you. Things like premature ejaculation, PE, erectile dysfunction, ED, inhibited sexual desire, ISD, maybe compulsive masturbation, ejaculatory inhibition, trouble climaxing, and also sexual secrets.
Sexual secrets, like what?
That could cover varying arousal patterns, maybe preferring masturbation over partnered sex, a history of sexual trauma, or conflicts around sexual orientation. It also covers major health issues impacting your sexual health, STDs, poor health habits, medical illnesses, infertility, aging fears, plus relationship problems like dissatisfaction, affairs, unresolved conflict.
Okay, the first step in tackling these, the book says, is figuring out the roots, physical, psychological, relational for you.
Exactly. If a persistent sexual difficulty pops up for you, it's important for both partners to think about what might be contributing. Physical factors,
Right.
psychological,
Right.
relational, and then decide on a plan, which might mean seeking professional help. The book actually has tables to help you consider those different potential causes.
And medical illnesses, medication side effects, those are big factors that can affect
Uh-huh.
your sexual function.
Right. Huge. Medical illnesses don't necessarily shut down your sex life, but they often change it. Whether it's diabetes, heart disease, cancer, whatever, the first step is being an active, informed patient for yourself.
Right.
The book stresses following medical advice, taking meds, keeping up healthy habits. It also suggests ways to cope with medication side effects impacting sex for you, like talking to your doctor about alternatives, maybe adjusting dosages or timing, possibly using pro-sex meds like Viagra to compensate, spending more time on pleasuring, even considering planned drug holidays if appropriate. And it strongly advises involving your partner in doctor visits to discuss the sexual side of treatment.
The book also briefly covers some common male dysfunctions and general treatment directions. Can you touch on those for our listener?
Sure, for ED, erectile dysfunction that you might experience, the approach involves moving away from that performance model towards pleasure focus, acknowledging possible vascular neurological changes, discussing pro-erection meds, Viagra, Cialis, Levitra, and sometimes considering devices like penile braces, vacuum pumps, or even surgical options.
Okay. What about low desire, ISD?
For inhibited sexual desire that might worry you, the focus is on rebuilding positive anticipation, valuing your partner as an erotic friend, embracing that good enough sex idea, blending arousal styles, addressing health habits, and maybe, in some cases, looking at testosterone levels.
And difficulty ejaculating, EI.
For ejaculatory inhibition that might be an issue for you, strategies include using multiple stimulation methods, kind of piggybacking arousal on your partners, getting to a higher level of subjective arousal before trying intercourse, using erotic fantasies, identifying specific orgasm triggers, and really just allowing the erotic flow to happen.
The issue of sexual secrets comes up again, and their negative impact is stressed for you in your relationships.
Yes, the book really points out how damaging keeping sexual secrets can be from partners, doctors, even close friends. These secrets, often fueled by a mix of eroticism and shame, can powerfully reinforce unhealthy sexual patterns for you. Openness, honesty, they're urged as the way to break free from the grip of these secrets in your life.
On a more serious note, the book does address illegal sexual behavior and stresses getting professional help for harmful thoughts or actions that might guilt through you or someone you know.
That's crucial. It clarifies thoughts and fantasies aren't illegal, but unregulated thoughts or fantasies about illegal acts can lead to harmful behavior. The book strongly urges anyone worried about such thoughts or who has acted on illegal paraphilias, exhibitionism, voyeurism, frauderism, pedophilia, to get professional help immediately. Prevention and therapy are presented as far, far better than legal trouble and the harm caused to others.
The idea of sexual compulsivity is also defined, with ways to recognize it outlined for you.
Yeah, sexual compulsivity is described as both an individual and a relationship problem. involves obsessive sexual fantasies and behaviors, often including very frequent masturbation. The book offers a table with signs to help you recognize if a compulsive behavior problem might exist. Dealing with this usually needs professional help.
Affairs are another disruptive thing the book tackles, something you might have dealt with or worried about.
Yes, affairs are categorized like high opportunity, low involvement flings, ongoing compartmentalized affairs, and comparison affairs, which pose the biggest threat to the main relationship for you. The book emphasizes prevention first, through clear understanding and agreement with your partner about vulnerabilities and boundaries. It stresses affairs are usually disruptive, need to be dealt with openly, not denied or handled with high drama. While some lead to divorce, others can be a crisis point that actually pushes couples to finally address underlying issues.
And sensitive topics like sexual trauma and sexual orientation conflict are mentioned too, possibly part of your own or someone else's story.
For sexual trauma, the book highlights the need to process the abuse to regain psychological and sexual health, emphasizing that resilience is possible for you or someone you know. Regarding sexual orientation conflict, it notes orientation is complex, largely biological, involving attraction, identity, behavior, fantasy, friendships, social comfort, not as simple either. Conflicts and secrets around orientation can be really difficult, filled with misunderstanding for you or people around you.
And STDs and infertility are also framed as health issues affecting sexual well-being that might be relevant to your life.
STDs are presented just as a reality of sex today, something needing to be treated as a health issue. Infertility is discussed as a really stressful couple issue that requires teamwork and support, avoiding those old gender traps where maybe the man downplays the concerns.
Finally, the book busts the male menopause myth and really circles back to actively valuing and investing in your intimate relationships.
Yeah, it clarifies that while testosterone does gradually decline with healthy aging, there's no big hormonal shift like female menopause. The book repeats that dissatisfaction with your partner or the relationship. Those are major problems needing couple therapy sooner rather than later for you. It hammers home the need to actively value and put time and energy into intimate relationships to keep them vital and secure. It even includes exercises to help you identify sexual problems, create change plans, and think about relapse prevention and continued sexual growth. Okay, we're getting close to the end of our deep dive here. The book finishes by really emphasizing the value of having an intimate, erotic sexual life for you. It reflects on how much our understanding of male sexuality has changed.
Yeah, it feels like we've come a long way, but maybe it's still confusing.
It's true. Compared to the ignorance and silence of the past, we know more. But yeah, current messages can be really confusing for you to sort through. The book is critical of putting too much emphasis just on medical fixes or perfect performance when dealing with things like ED or PE. That can feel intimidating, disempowering for you.
It shares Donovan's story as a positive counterexample of healthy sexual development. What stands out about his experience for you?
Donovan's story is great because it shows healthy development influenced by a supportive grandfather who gave him positive values and realistic expectations about sex, relationships, marriage. Donovan valued both intimacy and eroticism with his wife. He had this positive attitude towards sex, which the book stresses is actually more crucial for healthy sexuality than even testosterone levels or how firm an erection is for you.
And the book repeats some key shifts in perspective for you to find greater sexual satisfaction.
The core shift, really, is moving from performing for a woman to sharing with her, embracing sex as this equitable, mutual thing. It encourages you to integrate the best parts of traditional male sexuality with this more relational, pleasure-focused approach, recognizing that intimate, interactive sex is ultimately just more satisfying than autonomous sex.
So the final takeaway seems to be about embracing that good enough sex as a positive part of your life and seeing sexuality as dynamic, always evolving.
Exactly. The book encourages you to make good enough sex a positive, integral part of your life. Acknowledge that sexuality is an ongoing process, needs continued psychological energy. It stresses developing a specific relapse prevention plan, maybe with your partner's support, to maintain and grow healthy male and couple sexuality.
And for anyone listening who feels they might need extra support, the book briefly touches on seeking professional help. What are the main pointers there for you?
It mentions couples therapy and sex therapy are clinical specialties, offered by various professionals, psychologists, social workers, MFTs, psychiatrists. It emphasizes the therapist's competence is more important than their specific degree for you. It suggests resources, insurance panels, community clinics, universities, and advises being assertive, asking about credentials, their therapy focus. It does caution against poorly qualified folks calling themselves counselors or coaches. And it gives contact info for professional organizations like ASECT and ESSA STAR for sex therapy referrals, and AAMFT, ABCT for marital therapy referrals. Plus, it mentions an appendix with more suggested readings if you want to explore further.
So plenty of resources out there for you if you want to learn more or get professional guidance. Well, that pretty much brings us to the end of our deep dive into men's sexual health. It's been really comprehensive, I think, for you listening.
It really has. We've covered a lot of territory, highlighting that holistic view encompassing your physical, psychological, relational well-being, talking about challenging those unrealistic expectations, valuing intimacy and pleasure beyond just performance, and remembering sexual health is lifelong for you.
And hopefully this has given you some valuable insights, maybe sparked some further thought, some self-reflection. This is really just a starting point for you, right? We encourage you to keep exploring these ideas, consider your own experiences, your own values.
Absolutely. Understanding your own sexuality, it's an ongoing journey. Always learning, always growing for you.
So maybe our final thought for you today is this. Considering all those societal messages you've soaked up about sex over your life, what's maybe one belief you might want to reevaluate just for the sake of your own sexual well-being? Something for you to think about.
Good question.
And who knows, perhaps we'll dive into related topics in future deep dives, depending on what you'd like to hear. Thanks for joining us.